She risked everything to save her husband at the Galactic Council. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council stretched as far as the eye could see, its walls glittering with the faint shimmer of alien metals that humans could barely comprehend. Hundreds of representatives from every known system had gathered, each a living testament to the diversity and complexity of the galaxy. Towering beings with crystalline limbs, floating entities whose bodies were formed of shifting energy, and species that moved in ways that defied earthly physics crowded the hall. All eyes were fixed on the center of the room, where a single human, Ethan Hale, stood restrained in a cage-like device that hovered slightly above the floor. Ethan looked calm, though the subtle tension in his posture betrayed the storm of thoughts running through his mind. He had faced danger before, on battlefields, on distant worlds, in hostile negotiations. But this was different. Here, he was judged not by strength or skill, but by laws so ancient and alien that even their interpretation caused divisions among the council members themselves. Whispers buzzed around the room, some filled with curiosity, others with disdain. Humans were rare visitors to these high chambers, and many species regarded them as unpredictable, reckless, and dangerous. At the edge of the chamber, a figure moved forward. Her presence commanded attention even before her voice reached the council. Lyra, a tall, elegant woman with iridescent skin that reflected light like polished silver, stepped into the center. She had trained her entire life for this, raised in privilege, trained in diplomacy, and schooled in the politics of countless systems. Yet nothing in her experience had prepared her for the challenge she faced now. The council had made it clear, no human should stand among them and no alien should interfere on his behalf. And yet here she was. "Esteemed members of the council," Lyra began, her voice steady, carrying through the chamber with an authority that silenced the murmurs. "I do not come to challenge your laws lightly, but I cannot remain silent while you judge a man who saved lives you refuse to protect." Her words caused a stir. Some representatives leaned forward, curious. Others stiffened, their limbs trembling with irritation. Lyra ignored the reactions and continued, her eyes locked on the High Arbiter at the front. "This man, Ethan Hale, is accused of violating an ancient code that forbids interference in the affairs of other species. Yet what is a law meant to serve if it allows suffering to continue unchecked? What value is justice if it refuses to act when innocent lives are at stake?" A murmur of disapproval rippled through the hall. The High Arbiter, a towering figure with multiple arms and eyes that rotated slowly on its head, leaned forward, its voice a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate the very walls. "Lyra Valen, your presence here is a breach of council protocol. Speak cautiously, or you may find yourself facing the same judgment as the accused." Lyra's hands tightened at her sides, but her voice did not waver. "I am aware of the risks, High Arbiter, but I will not allow fear to dictate morality." Ethan Hale acted not for profit, not for power, but to save lives. He placed himself in harm's way when others would only calculate risk and retreat. That is not recklessness, that is courage. The chamber fell into a tense silence. The council members exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable to human eyes. For many, courage was a foreign concept, especially when measured against interstellar law. They had long believed humans to be impulsive, chaotic, and difficult to control. Lyra's words forced them to consider an uncomfortable truth. Humans acted according to conscience, not tradition. Ethan, still confined in the hovering cage, watched his wife speak. He had always known that Lyra was brave, but he had never truly understood the depth of her courage until now. Every motion of her body, every carefully chosen word radiated determination. She was risking everything, her status, her home, her very life, for him. A surge of emotion passed through him, but he did not speak. He had learned long ago that actions often carried more weight than words, especially in a place where one wrong statement could mean death. Lyra moved closer to the center of the hall, her gaze sweeping across the crowd. She saw skepticism, anger, and curiosity in equal measure. Some aliens whispered to each other in languages she did not understand, while others simply stared, unmoving, as if trying to decipher the human form before them. She ignored them all, focusing only on the truth she had come to deliver. "Do not mistake this as defiance," she continued, her voice firm. "I speak because justice has value only when it is applied wisely. Ethan Hale did not break the law out of malice. He broke it because he chose life over inaction. Thousands of lives were saved because of him. If you punish him, you punish not only a man of honor, but the principle that compassion must sometimes outweigh bureaucracy. A counselor from the planet Draylen, its body composed of shifting liquid crystal, spoke up, its voice like chimes in the wind. You risk your own life to defend a human, Lyra. Do you not fear the consequences? This council has strict rules regarding interference. Even minor violations carry penalties for those who intervene. Lyra met its gaze evenly. I do not fear death or punishment. I fear indifference. I fear a galaxy where courage is measured by obedience rather than action. I would rather fall beside him than live knowing I remained silent while injustice prevailed. A heavy silence settled over the chamber. For the first time in the Council's history, a human's fate was being argued not by law, but by principle and by an alien's courage. Some Council members shifted uneasily. They had spent centuries enforcing rules with cold precision. Few had ever considered morality or empathy as tools of judgment. Lyra's defiance, grounded in love and justice, challenged everything they thought they knew. High Arbiter's multiple eyes rotated slowly, taking in the scene. It spoke again, its voice now tinged with curiosity rather than anger. Very well, Lyra Valen, you may present your evidence. Speak, but remember that deception or exaggeration will be punished. The Council does not forgive manipulation. Lyra nodded once, then gestured to a holographic display that appeared in the center of the hall. Images flickered to life, showing Ethan during the mission in question. He could be seen shielding alien children as explosions tore through the city. He led injured civilians to safety while Council forces hesitated, calculating risk and waiting for orders that never came. This is the truth, Lyra said softly. Not rumor, not hearsay. These are facts recorded by independent observers. Ethan Hale acted when others would not. If you consider this a crime, then you redefine bravery as lawlessness. But if you consider this an act of courage, then you see a human capable of more than you have allowed yourselves to believe. The chamber was electric with tension. Alien delegates whispered frantically among themselves. Some studied the recordings closely, their faces betraying awe, hesitation, and doubt. Others simply turned away, unwilling to confront a reality that challenged centuries of belief. Ethan felt the weight of the room upon him. He had never wanted recognition or praise. He had acted because it was right, because he could not ignore suffering when he had the ability to prevent it. And now, with Lyra standing by his side, he understood that his actions were more than a simple choice. They were a statement of humanity's essence. Humans acted out of conscience, out of empathy, and out of courage, even when the universe expected them to do otherwise. Lyra stepped closer to the cage. Her voice softened, but it carried across the hall with clarity. I do not ask you to free him out of fear. I ask you to consider what humanity represents. They are not perfect, nor are they bound by the same customs that govern your species. But they do not wait for others to act. They do not hesitate when lives are at stake. Judge him not by your rules, but by what he has done for the galaxy. A ripple of whispers filled the room again. The Council members were divided now. Some were swayed, others infuriated, but all were thinking. Lyra could feel the pressure building, the sense that every second she spent speaking was a test of endurance, intelligence, and courage. Finally, the High Arbiter's voice echoed again, calm but heavy. Your words are noted, Lyra Valen. The Council will deliberate. The trial is not yet concluded, but your testimony will weigh heavily. Be aware, interference may have consequences. Lyra nodded once, keeping her expression composed. She stepped back, but her eyes never left Ethan. In that brief moment, no words were needed between them. They shared an understanding deeper than speech, a bond forged through trust, love, and mutual respect. Whatever came next, they would face it together. As the Council began their private deliberations, Ethan floated slightly in the cage, unbound by chains only in spirit. He had faced impossible odds before, but this was the first time someone had risked everything, not for power, not for glory, but simply for him. Lyra's courage was a mirror of his own belief in humanity's potential. Outside the hall, the galaxy continued its motion, unaware of the trial that would shape perceptions of an entire species. But within those walls, a story of bravery, love, and the human spirit was unfolding. And in that moment, the seeds of change were planted. Lyra took a deep breath, knowing that the path ahead would not be easy. The Council could be merciless, and their laws rigid beyond comprehension. Yet she had spoken the truth, and in doing so, she had reminded the galaxy that even the smallest voice, when guided by courage, could challenge the greatest powers. And so, the first part of this story ended not with victory, but with hope. The chamber remained silent, the council's verdict unknown. But one thing was certain. Humanity had left its mark, and one alien had dared to risk everything to ensure it would not be forgotten. The council doors sealed with a metallic hiss, and the representatives gathered in clusters, speaking in low, urgent tones. Lyra remained standing near the hovering cage that held Ethan, her silver skin catching the dim light of the chamber. Despite the tension, her gaze was unwavering. She knew that what she had done in Part 1, the public defense of Ethan, was only the beginning. Now the real battle began, convincing the council that humanity's courage could not be measured by ancient laws alone. Ethan floated slightly in the cage, his hands pressed together, observing the shifting emotions in the room. He had learned early in life to read alien expressions, even when they were unlike anything human. He could sense the divisions forming. Some counselors were swayed by Lyra's words, others were deeply angered. The High Arbiter remained still at the front, multiple eyes slowly rotating, absorbing the murmurs, waiting for the right moment to speak. Ethan knew that any misstep now could cost them both dearly. Lyra stepped forward once more, her voice calm but resolute. "I have spoken and you have listened, but words alone cannot convey the truth of what humans are capable of. I will show you more." She activated a device at her side, projecting holographic images of the rescue mission in unprecedented detail. This time, the images were more intimate. Ethan carrying injured children across collapsed streets, coordinating aliens who had no experience in rescue operations, calming frightened civilians while danger loomed on all sides. Some council members gasped. They had seen recordings before, but this new perspective, closer, more personal, made the events undeniable. For the first time, many could understand the risks Ethan had taken and the lives he had saved. A few of the more curious members whispered to one another, their alien forms quivering with surprise. From the far corner of the hall, a delegate with segmented limbs and a voice like grinding stones spoke sharply. "Do you expect us to believe that a human can act with such precision and courage under pressure? Their history shows recklessness, not heroism. How can one incident erase centuries of chaos?" Lyra turned to face the delegate, her posture unyielding. "You speak of history, but history is written by those who survive. Ethan's actions were not reckless, they were deliberate. He assessed danger, he made choices that saved lives, and he acted without hesitation when others faltered. Courage is not measured by past failures, but by the willingness to act when it matters most." The chamber remained tense. The words struck some, angered others. Lyra's heart pounded, not from fear but from the weight of responsibility. She was not only speaking for Ethan, but for humanity as a whole. She had to prove that humans were not a threat, but allies capable of compassion, bravery, and intelligence beyond what many species had ever expected. High Arbiter's voice rumbled, calm but firm. "Lyra Valen, your passion is noted, yet passion alone cannot dictate judgment. You risk more than your life by continuing to interfere. Speak wisely, or you may find yourself bound as the accused is bound." Lyra's silver eyes met the Arbiter's many eyes. "I am fully aware of the risk, but if I remain silent, I would betray the truth. And truth, High Arbiter, must always be spoken, no matter the danger." Ethan's gaze met hers, and in that silent exchange, a bond strengthened. They were in this together, and the council could not see the depth of their connection, yet it mattered. It was more than love. It was shared courage, a mutual understanding that each would risk everything for the other. A sudden motion in the crowd drew Lyra's attention. A delegation from the planet Trivara, a species known for rigid adherence to protocol, rose slowly. Their translucent form shimmered with hues of purple and blue as they spoke. "Lyra Valen, you are playing a dangerous game. Interfering in council proceedings in such a manner is unprecedented. You could face exile, loss of status, or worse. Why do you persist?" Lyra met the Trivaran gaze evenly. "Because the alternative is worse. The alternative is silence in the face of injustice. You ask why I persist, but the question should be, why would you allow harm to come to the innocent when you have the power to prevent it? I do not act for personal gain, nor for glory. I act because it is right, and right must prevail." Some counselors shifted uneasily. For the first time, they were confronted with a perspective that challenged their traditions. They had spent centuries enforcing rules, yet these rules had allowed lives to be lost. Lyra's words were not just defense, they were accusation, and they forced the council to examine its own failures. High Arbiter spoke again, its many voices layered like a chorus. Very well, evidence has been presented and words have been spoken, but actions speak louder. Will this human, Ethan Hale, demonstrate his claim of courage and wisdom under scrutiny? Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly, but he remained calm. I have already demonstrated it, High Arbiter, he said. The council must see that judgment is not always about law. It is about principle, morality, and action. If my actions are deemed worthy, then you will have proof that humanity is capable of more than fear. The council buzzed with murmurs. Some members were intrigued, others bristled. Lyra knew this was her chance to push further. Allow him to speak to the council, she urged. Not through words alone, but through demonstration. Observe what humans can do when their instincts, training, and conscience align. High Arbiter considered her words, its eyes rotating slowly. After a long pause, it finally spoke. So be it. A demonstration shall be arranged under controlled conditions, but know this, any attempt at deception will be met with the harshest penalties. The chamber doors opened, and a platform descended into the hall. Lyra and Ethan moved to it carefully. The demonstration was simple yet profound. A simulation of the rescue mission on a holographic scale, complete with challenges that required split-second decisions, coordination with alien species, and improvisation under life-threatening conditions. Ethan moved with a steady precision, coordinating the simulation as if it were real. His decisions saved simulated lives, often at personal risk. He improvised solutions that no rigid protocol could have predicted. Lyra watched from the side, her heart pounding. She knew that the council was observing every detail, and that this was a test not just of Ethan's abilities, but of humanity's worthiness in the eyes of the galaxy. As the simulation ended, the council was silent. Many had never witnessed such deliberate courage and ingenuity. Some whispered that perhaps humans were more capable than they had assumed. Others gritted their teeth, unwilling to accept what they had seen. A delegate from the planet Jar, known for its strict legalist traditions, spoke finally. The human has performed admirably, but one instance does not define an entire species. How can you claim that humanity as a whole is worthy of trust? Lyra stepped forward, her voice strong. You do not need to trust all humans. But you can recognize that courage, wisdom, and moral choice exist within us. Ethan Hale is not an anomaly. He is a reflection of what humans are capable of when they act not for power, but for life itself. Will you punish a species for what it has been, or will you judge it for what it can be? The chamber was divided. Some council members were swayed, some remained opposed. Lyra's words had planted seeds of doubt in the minds of those who had been certain that humans were reckless. But the council's judgment was far from settled. Ethan floated beside her, calm yet alert. Lyra, he whispered quietly, you have already risked everything for me. Now it is up to the council. She placed a hand gently on his, her silver fingers warm against his skin. No, she said softly, it is up to both of us. We will face whatever comes together. Hours passed. The council convened in private, their deliberations hidden from the human eye. Lyra remained in the hall, watching the chamber doors, ready to act if necessary. She knew that their enemies could strike at any moment, that rules could shift, and that one wrong word could cost Ethan his life. Finally, the High Arbiter returned, its voice echoing through the hall. The council has deliberated. Your actions have been noted, human. Your bravery is acknowledged and the evidence is compelling, yet questions remain. Lyra Valen, your interference is unprecedented. Explain why you continue to risk everything for a human being. Lyra's gaze met every eye in the chamber. Because it is right. Because the alternative is silence, and silence allows injustice to thrive. Because love, courage, and conscience are more powerful than fear. And because humanity deserves a chance to show its worth, not only through words or laws, but through actions that save lives when others hesitate. A heavy silence fell. Some counselors whispered to one another, debating fiercely. The High Arbiter's many eyes rotated slowly, considering her words. Finally, it spoke. We have observed courage, deliberation, and morality. These are qualities that transcend law and species. The council will continue deliberation, but your actions, human and alien alike, will weigh heavily. Be aware, final judgment may still carry consequences. Proceed carefully. Lyra nodded, understanding the warning. She stepped back, her hand brushing Ethan's briefly. In that gesture was reassurance, promise, and unspoken strength. For now, they had survived the first storm, but the winds of the council were unpredictable, and the next challenge would be even greater. As the chamber emptied for the night, Lyra and Ethan were left standing together, facing an uncertain future. Yet in that moment, they shared a quiet victory. They had shown the galaxy that humans were capable of courage, compassion, and wisdom. And they had shown that love, when combined with bravery, could challenge even the most rigid of powers. The night sky above the council hall shimmered with distant stars, a reminder of the vast galaxy that lay beyond. And within the walls of the Grand Hall, a single human and his alien wife had taken the first step toward reshaping history. Lyra turned to Ethan, her silver eyes reflecting the distant light. "Tomorrow, we face them again," she said softly. "But no matter what happens, I will stand by you," Ethan nodded. "And I by you, together we are stronger than they can imagine." And with that, they prepared for the next stage of the trial, knowing that their courage and conviction would be tested like never before. The next morning, the Grand Hall of the Galactic Council hummed with tension. Outside, the galaxy seemed indifferent, with starships drifting silently between distant suns, unaware of the trial unfolding within. Inside, every delegate was present, their shapes and forms a swirling kaleidoscope of alien life. Some were sleek and metallic, their bodies reflecting the chamber lights, while others had soft, flowing forms, almost ethereal. Yet all attention focused on the cage where Ethan Hale floated, calm yet watchful. Lyra stood beside him, her posture steady, her silver skin glimmering under the chamber's ambient glow. She had spent the night reviewing her words, planning her arguments, and preparing for whatever the council might throw at them. The previous day's demonstration had shaken some members, stirred debate, and forced recognition of human courage. Yet the council was not so easily swayed. There were those among them who saw humans as chaotic forces that could never be controlled, and Lyra knew they would push back with force. The High Arbiter's multiple eyes rotated slowly, focusing on Lyra and Ethan in turn. Its voice, low and measured, filled the hall. "Human alien, the council has deliberated further. Questions remain regarding the motivations and methods of your actions. Human ethics, while admirable, are inconsistent with the laws and expectations of the galaxy. You may speak to clarify these concerns." Ethan's voice was calm, carrying a quiet authority. "High Arbiter, I do not expect my actions to conform to traditions I did not create. I acted because lives were in danger. Decisions must sometimes be made in the moment, without consultation, without hesitation. That is how humans operate, and that is why we are effective in crises. We value life above procedure, and that is our measure of worth." A ripple of murmurs spread through the chamber. Some delegates whispered in agreement, while others stiffened in disapproval. A counselor from the planet Drexus, with limbs resembling braided vines and a face of deep green, spoke sharply. "Your words suggest arrogance. You place human instinct above the council's collective wisdom. Do you not see that such thinking could destabilize alliances, endanger civilizations, and invite chaos?" Lyra moved forward, her eyes locking on the Drexian counselor. "You misunderstand. We do not seek to replace wisdom with instinct. We act when wisdom falters. Humanity does not reject guidance. We act when action is necessary. Ethics, empathy, and courage guide our choices. Chaos comes not from acting to save lives, but from failing to act when lives are at stake." The council murmured again. Some members nodded slightly, unable to deny the logic in her words. Others stiffened, angered by the challenge to centuries of rigid protocol. Lyra could feel the weight of their scrutiny, but she did not flinch. This was no longer only about Ethan. It was about humanity's place in the galaxy. From the far end of the hall, a delegate from the planet Varen, whose skin glimmered like liquid silver, spoke with authority. "And what of the collateral damage caused by your actions? Thousands of structures were destroyed and countless resources wasted. How can such recklessness be justified as heroism?" Ethan's gaze did not waver. "The mission's purpose was to save lives, not property. Life is more valuable than walls, than crystals, than ships. We do not calculate worth based on structures or commodities. We calculate worth based on the lives that remain, the families that continue, the futures that are preserved. If that is recklessness in your eyes, then so be it. In ours, it is duty. Lyra placed a hand on Ethan's cage, steadying herself. High Arbiter, members of the Council, I ask you to see beyond the immediate consequences. Human judgment may seem unorthodox, but it is guided by principle, not fear, not power, not tradition. Ethan Hale acted because it was the right thing to do. That is why I stand here, risking my own position, my life, and my status. Because right must be defended, even when laws are rigid, even when the galaxy doubts. The chamber fell silent, the weight of her words settling over every being present. Silence, however, was not approval. The council was divided. Some delegates leaned closer, intrigued. Others whispered in their native tongues, expressing anger, doubt, and disbelief. The High Arbiter's eyes rotated, scanning each member in turn. Your words are compelling, Lyra Valen, the Arbiter said finally. Yet they alone cannot absolve the human from scrutiny. The Council must witness not only intent but consistency. Human morality and judgment are inconsistent across individuals. How can we trust one man to represent the entire species? Ethan's jaw tightened. I do not claim to represent all humans. I claim only to act according to conscience, to preserve life when it is in danger. If you cannot trust one person who acts correctly, then what hope is there for trust at all? A cold murmur traveled across the chamber. For some counselors, his words were blasphemous. For others, they were profound. Lyra's heart swelled with pride, but she did not allow it to show. Pride could not protect them here. Only strategy, courage, and clarity could. Suddenly, a loud sound echoed through the hall. A delegate from the planet Surin, a species of towering forms with multiple limbs and glowing eyes, slammed one arm against the railing of their platform. Enough! You seek to manipulate the council with emotion, with sentiment. This is not how law functions. You gamble with power and order. Humanity is dangerous. Your actions, Lyra Valen, are reckless. Lyra's silver eyes met the Serenian gaze evenly. Reckless or courageous, you speak of power and order, yet turn away from lives in peril. That is recklessness. Courage requires risk. Compassion demands risk. I will not remain silent while fear masquerades as law. The council erupted into debate. Some members were shouting, their voices overlapping in dozens of languages. Others floated silently, processing the words. The tension was palpable, electric, almost suffocating. Lyra could feel it pressing against her, but she held firm. Every second she stood her ground, every word she spoke, chipped away at centuries of prejudice against humanity. High Arbiter's voice rose above the chaos, resonant and commanding. Enough! Silence! We will consider the arguments and observations presented. But know this, the final judgment will consider the risks, the intent, and the consequences. Actions, not words, will determine the outcome. Lyra turned to Ethan, her gaze firm. They are not ready to accept the truth yet, but they are listening. That is progress. Ethan nodded. And we will give them proof if necessary. Humanity has never shied away from action. If words are not enough, we will show them what courage looks like in practice. Over the next hours, the council arranged a series of controlled demonstrations, each designed to test not only Ethan's skill, but his judgment, adaptability, and ethics under pressure. Lyra assisted him at every turn, coordinating timing, relaying information, and ensuring that every display highlighted not only capability but moral choice. In one test, Ethan was required to rescue simulated lives in a scenario with multiple possible paths, each carrying risks to different groups. He calculated outcomes rapidly, prioritizing those in greatest danger while minimizing overall harm. Lyra observed closely, noting each decision, each calculation. Every choice reinforced the message. Humans acted with heart, intelligence, and courage. The council's reactions were mixed. Some members were visibly impressed, their alien features showing fascination and respect. Others bristled, uncomfortable with the challenge to their long-held assumptions. Lyra realized that this division worked in their favor. It meant that doubt had been planted, and doubt could grow into understanding. During a brief pause between demonstrations, a quiet voice whispered behind Lyra. You are risking everything, Valen. If the council turns against you, she did not flinch. It was a minor delegate from a remote system, one she had once befriended. I know the risks, she said. But courage is not measured by safety. It is measured by action in the face of danger. We cannot back down now. Ethan reached out, brushing his hand lightly against hers through the cage. "And I am here with you. Whatever happens, we face it together." The demonstrations continued late into the cycle. Ethan displayed skill, judgment, and courage, but it was Lyra's unwavering support and articulation of principle that left a lasting impression. Delegates began to whisper among themselves, some questioning the rigidness of their traditions, others debating the meaning of courage across species. As the final simulation concluded, the High Arbiter's voice resonated across the chamber. "Human, your actions and decisions have been observed. Alien, your counsel and guidance have been noted. The Council recognizes the courage, skill, and moral clarity displayed, yet judgment is not final. There remain questions of precedent, of law, and of the consequences of human involvement in galactic affairs. Deliberation continues." A heavy silence settled over the hall. The Council's verdict remained unknown, but one thing was certain. Ethan and Lyra had shifted the conversation. Humanity could no longer be dismissed as reckless or dangerous. Their actions had forced the galaxy to reconsider, to measure courage, morality, and judgment across species lines. Lyra turned to Ethan, her silver eyes reflecting the chamber's soft light. "This is far from over," she said, "but we have made them listen. We have shown them that humans can act with honor, with courage, and with heart." Ethan smiled faintly. "And they have seen what it means to risk everything for someone else. That is more than law can ever measure." The Council would return the next cycle with final deliberations, and the tension of uncertainty hung in the air like a storm cloud. Yet for the first time, hope had taken root. Together, Lyra and Ethan had not only defended a life, they had begun to defend the essence of humanity itself. The chamber was thick with tension as the Council reconvened. Silence dominated the hall, broken only by the subtle hum of hovering platforms and the faint rustle of alien forms moving across the polished floors. Every delegate's attention was fixed on the center, where Ethan Hale floated in his containment field, calm yet alert, and Lyra Valen stood steadfast beside him. The previous demonstrations had impressed some and angered others, but the Council was still divided. Their deliberations were weighing not just the actions of one human, but the implications of acknowledging the courage of a species that had long been underestimated. High Arbiter's many eyes rotated slowly, scanning each member before settling on Lyra. Its voice, measured and powerful, filled the chamber. "Lyra Valen, your actions and testimony have been noted, yet the Council is bound by law. Interference carries consequences. Your risk is extraordinary and unprecedented. Explain why you continue to place yourself in jeopardy for a human being." Lyra's silver eyes glimmered with determination. "Because it is right, because the alternative is indifference, because courage and conscience are stronger than fear. I will not allow this man to be punished for acting with honor. I will not allow humanity's potential to be dismissed because of rigid tradition. And if that means risking everything I have, then so be it." A murmur ran through the chamber. Some delegates were impressed, others bristled. To stand so openly and accept such risk was almost unthinkable. Lyra's words challenged centuries of rigid protocol, and yet they could not be ignored. From the far side of the hall, a delegate from the planet Zythera, a species known for their strict adherence to law, rose to speak. Their bodies shimmered like flowing glass, refracting the chamber's light as they moved. "Your courage is noted, Lyra Valen. Yet emotion cannot replace law. You risk destabilizing centuries of governance for one human. How can the Council justify tolerating such interference?" Lyra took a slow step forward, her voice firm and steady. "I am not asking for tolerance. I am asking for justice. Laws exist to protect, not to punish those who act to save lives. Ethan Hale acted because it was necessary. If the Council punishes him, it punishes all who would act courageously when the law hesitates. I will not stand by and watch that happen." The Council fell silent again, but the tension was palpable. It was clear that some members were beginning to question their own assumptions. Could a species so unpredictable, so often underestimated, truly be capable of moral courage and judgment? Could humans act not only for themselves, but for others, even when the cost was great? High Arbiter's voice cut through the quiet. "Enough words. The Council requires proof, not argument. Demonstration of intent, skill, and moral judgment will decide the fate of this human and all who intervene. Are you prepared to provide it?" Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. He had expected this moment. "Yes," he said simply. We are ready. A massive platform descended from above, transforming into a holographic arena that filled the chamber. The simulation was unlike anything they had attempted before. It was designed to test not only Ethan's abilities, but the consequences of every decision he might make. The council's eyes followed every movement, every choice. Lyra stood by his side, coordinating the simulation, ensuring it reflected not only skill but ethical decision-making. The scenario was extreme. Simulated alien cities were collapsing under unpredictable calamities. Civilians were trapped, resources were limited, and each action could result in unintended consequences. Ethan's task was to save as many lives as possible while minimizing harm, all under the watchful scrutiny of the Council. He moved with precise efficiency, analyzing risks and acting decisively. Lyra observed, her heart pounding, noting each choice he made. He lifted debris to save trapped beings, coordinated with alien volunteers, and made decisions that prioritized life above all else. The Council watched closely, their murmurs growing quieter as the demonstration unfolded. Some delegates were visibly impressed, their alien forms quivering with admiration. Others resisted, their eyes narrowing, unwilling to acknowledge that a human could act with such intelligence and moral clarity. Yet every action Ethan took reinforced the undeniable truth. Humanity's courage was not empty rhetoric, but real, measurable, and consequential. As the simulation reached its climax, a critical decision emerged. A building on the edge of collapse threatened to endanger a group of civilians. Ethan could save them, but doing so would place another group in imminent danger. The Council watched in silence, waiting to see how he would act. Ethan glanced at Lyra. She nodded slightly, her eyes steady, her presence giving him courage. He made his choice. Using quick improvisation, he redirected the collapsing structure, saving both groups. The maneuver was risky, almost impossible, but it worked. Every delegate gasped, some leaning forward in astonishment. The simulation ended and silence fell again. The Council members were visibly shaken. Some whispered in astonishment, others debated heatedly, but the impact of Ethan's actions could not be denied. He had demonstrated not only skill and courage, but the ability to make ethical decisions under pressure. High Arbiter's voice resonated across the chamber. Human, your actions are undeniable. You have displayed courage, judgment, and morality in the face of extreme adversity. Yet the Council must consider precedent. Interference in our proceedings and the influence of alien allies cannot be ignored. Lyra Valen, your actions have been extraordinary. What will you offer to ensure the Council's decision honors both law and justice? Lyra's gaze met Ethan's briefly. She knew what she had to do. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, her silver skin glimmering in the chamber's lights. High Arbiter, she said, her voice unwavering, I offer myself. My life, my status, my privileges, all that I hold dear, as a guarantee that the human before you acted with honor, and that the Council may recognize the value of courage and conscience over rigid adherence to law. If my sacrifice can save him, then I accept it willingly. The chamber fell silent, stunned by the audacity of her declaration. No alien had ever offered such a thing for a human, and few had ever dared to risk so much for another being, regardless of species. Murmurs rippled across the Council floor. Some members looked shocked, others impressed, and a few bristled, viewing her words as reckless. High Arbiter's multiple eyes rotated slowly, considering her offer. Lyra Valen, your proposal is unprecedented. To place yourself at risk in exchange for the life of a human challenges tradition, law, and protocol. Yet it cannot be ignored. The Council must deliberate, but your courage and willingness to sacrifice have weighed heavily upon us. Lyra's heart beat steadily, but she did not waver. She had made her choice, and there was no turning back. She had risked everything not for power, not for recognition, but for love, justice, and principle. And in doing so, she had shown the Council that true courage transcends species, law, and fear. Ethan reached out, his hand brushing hers briefly through the cage. You don't have to do this, he whispered. She shook her head. I do. Courage is not measured by safety. It is measured by the willingness to act when everything is at stake. The Council deliberated in silence for several cycles. Delegates spoke in hushed tones, debating fiercely. Some argued that Lyra's offer was reckless and could destabilize the Council's authority. Others argued that rejecting her would be a moral failure and an insult to the courage displayed by both humans and aliens. Finally, the High Arbiter spoke, its voice echoing across the chamber. The Council has considered all arguments, actions, and evidence. The human, Ethan Hale, has displayed courage, judgment, and moral clarity. Lyra Valen has demonstrated sacrifice, loyalty, and principle beyond measure. In light of these factors, and in recognition of the value of courage and conscience, the Council decrees that Ethan Hale shall be released from all charges. Lyra Valen shall retain her status, and her actions shall serve as a precedent for the recognition of moral courage across species. The chamber erupted in quiet murmurs. Some delegates looked shocked, others relieved, but all recognized the significance of the decision. Humanity had been judged fairly, and Lyra's bravery had altered the course of the Council's perception. Ethan floated in the cage, now unbound, and looked at Lyra with gratitude and awe. "You risked everything for me," he said softly. "And you acted with honor," she replied. "Together we have shown the Council what courage truly means." Outside the chamber, the galaxy continued in its vast, indifferent way. But within the walls of the Grand Hall, a new standard had been set. Courage, principle, and moral clarity had triumphed over rigid tradition and fear. Humans were no longer seen as reckless outsiders. They had earned respect, thanks to Ethan's actions and Lyra's willingness to risk everything. As they left the council hall, delegates and observers alike whispered about the events that had unfolded. Stories of bravery, sacrifice, and courage spread quickly through the chambers, ensuring that the legacy of this trial would be remembered for cycles to come. Lyra and Ethan stood side by side, facing the vast expanse of the galaxy beyond the chamber's walls. They had risked everything, challenged centuries of protocol, and emerged victorious. And in that moment, they understood something fundamental. Courage, love, and conscience are forces that even the most rigid laws cannot contain. Together, they had not only saved a life, they had reshaped the way the galaxy would see humanity forever. The morning after the Council's decision, the Grand Hall seemed almost peaceful, though a subtle tension lingered in the air. Delegates from countless star systems moved quietly, some still discussing the unprecedented events of the previous cycles. Lyra Valen and Ethan Hale stood together, facing a new reality. The Council had judged humanity's courage fairly, and their actions had created a ripple that would be felt throughout the galaxy. Yet despite the victory, Lyra knew their journey was far from over. Ethan floated beside her, unbound now, his expression calm but reflective. "We've won the Council's recognition, but this is just the beginning," he said softly. "The galaxy will watch closely now, and humans will be held to high expectations." Lyra nodded. "I know. But what matters is that we showed them what humanity can do when courage and conscience guide action. We cannot control the galaxy, but we can demonstrate what is possible." Delegates began to approach, cautiously at first. A few of the more skeptical members, their forms rigid and cautious, stepped forward. The Drexian delegate who had questioned Ethan's intentions spoke first. "Human, Lyra Valen, your actions were extraordinary. We have underestimated your species, and we recognize our error. The Council's judgment was influenced by your demonstration, and we are grateful for your courage and clarity." Ethan inclined his head slightly. "Thank you. That recognition is meaningful, but more important is understanding. Humanity acts from principle, not pride. We hope our actions can inspire others to act with similar courage." The counselors from Zythera and Varen also stepped forward, their forms shimmering with acknowledgement. "Your decisions reflect clarity and moral integrity," said the Varen delegate. "This council will remember the courage and wisdom you demonstrated. It is a reminder that law without conscience is incomplete." Lyra allowed herself a small, quiet smile. For the first time in many cycles, she felt the weight of relief. Yet in her heart, she knew that the galaxy was vast and unpredictable. One council's judgment could shift, alliances could change, and new challenges were inevitable. Still, the precedent they had set, demonstrating that humans could act with both courage and moral clarity, was a victory that could not be undone easily. High Arbiter's many eyes rotated slowly as it approached them. Its voice resonated through the hall, steady and commanding. "Lyra Valen, Ethan Hale, your actions have challenged expectations, influenced perception, and demonstrated qualities that transcend species. Courage, empathy, and moral judgment are now recognized as essential considerations for all decisions made by this council. Let your example guide future deliberations. Ethan looked at Lyra, a sense of profound respect and gratitude in his eyes. "We did it," he whispered, "not just for us but for everyone who acts with courage and conscience." Lyra placed her hand over his briefly. "We did it together, and now the galaxy has seen what humanity can achieve when guided by principle and love." Delegates began to depart, and the chamber slowly emptied. The sunlight filtering through the grand windows reflected off metallic surfaces, casting a warm glow over the hall. For a moment, the weight of the council's scrutiny lifted, leaving only a sense of accomplishment and hope. Outside the grand hall, Ethan and Lyra moved through corridors filled with beings who had once doubted them, but now looked on with a mix of admiration and curiosity. Word of their actions had already begun to spread, and it was clear that the Council's decision would influence other planetary alliances, trade negotiations, and interstellar diplomacy. Humanity's reputation had shifted, from reckless outsiders to respected participants whose courage and moral clarity could not be ignored. As they reached a balcony overlooking the city of the Council's planet, Ethan took a deep breath, watching starships glide between the planets above. "It's strange," he said quietly. "All this attention, all these eyes on us, yet we were just doing what was right." Lyra smiled softly. "That is exactly why it matters. Doing what is right is often the most courageous act of all, and sometimes it changes the world in ways we cannot predict." A quiet commotion drew their attention. Delegates were gathering in small clusters, discussing the events of the past cycles. Some were clearly inspired, whispering about how humans had demonstrated qualities that transcended species and law. Others were hesitant, still cautious about embracing change, but no one could deny that the Council's perception had shifted. A delegation from the planet Surin, previously vocal in opposition, approached cautiously. Their glowing eyes softened as they spoke. "We admit we underestimated your species. Your courage and the clarity of your decisions has forced us to reconsider our assumptions. We will advocate for recognition of humans in future deliberations. Your actions have opened a door we thought was closed." Ethan inclined his head slightly. "Thank you. It is not recognition we seek for its own sake. It is understanding. If the galaxy understands what humans are capable of, perhaps fewer lives will be lost to fear, hesitation, or rigid tradition." Lyra reached out and placed her hand on Ethan's shoulder, grounding both of them amidst the flurry of attention. "And they will remember, not just for what was done here, but for what it represents: courage, conscience, and love across all species." As the day progressed, more delegates and observers came forward. Some offered praise, others asked questions about how humans approached problem-solving in crises. Lyra and Ethan answered patiently, demonstrating how ethics, quick thinking, and moral responsibility guided every choice. Each interaction strengthened humanity's image as a species capable of responsibility and integrity, capable of standing shoulder to shoulder with the galaxy's most experienced civilizations. Even those who had doubted them most were forced to reconsider. The Council's archives would forever include records of the events, the demonstrations, and Lyra's unprecedented willingness to risk everything for another being. Histories would note that courage was not measured by species, but by the choices made when stakes were highest. As night fell, the grand hall's lights dimmed, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Ethan and Lyra stood together, reflecting on the cycles that had passed. "We've changed something," Ethan said softly. "Not just the Council, but perhaps the galaxy's understanding of humans," Lyra nodded. "Yes, and the impact will continue long after we leave here. Courage and principle are contagious. Others will see what we have done, and they will act similarly. One act of courage can inspire countless more." A quiet hum from the council chambers signaled the closing of the day's proceedings. Delegates began to depart, some floating gracefully into the starry sky above, others slipping through corridors toward awaiting ships. For Lyra and Ethan, the moment was one of reflection and quiet celebration. Their journey had been perilous, their risks great, but they had emerged stronger, and humanity had been vindicated. Ethan reached out and took Lyra's hand, holding it tightly. "Whatever comes next," he said, "we face it together. The Council, the galaxy, nothing can undo what we've shown today." Lyra smiled, her silver eyes reflecting the starlight above. Together always, courage and conscience guided us and love carried us through. The galaxy may be vast and uncertain, but we have proven that even in the face of doubt, the right choices can change everything. In the weeks that followed, word of their courage spread across star systems. Humanity's reputation grew, and alliances shifted. Delegations that had once dismissed humans now sought counsel, advice, and cooperation. Lyra and Ethan became symbols of courage, principle, and the power of standing for what is right, even against overwhelming odds. On a quiet evening, they returned to a small observation deck overlooking the Council's planet. Starships moved silently above, distant worlds glimmered in the night, and the galaxy stretched out infinitely before them. Lyra leaned against Ethan, her head resting on his shoulder. "It's strange," she said softly. "All this recognition, yet it feels like just the beginning." Ethan nodded. "It is just the beginning, but beginnings are powerful. They set the stage for everything that follows. And now we have shown the galaxy that humans are capable of courage, love, and moral clarity. That is a beginning worth having." They stood together, watching the stars, feeling the weight of what they had accomplished. Their journey had tested them, challenged them, and demanded the highest courage. Yet in the end they had prevailed, not through force, not through fear, but through principle, action, and unwavering commitment to what was right. The galaxy, vast and complex, had shifted. Humanity's place within it had been forever altered. And as Lyra and Ethan looked out over the stars, they understood something essential. Courage is measured not by strength alone, but by the willingness to act, even when the cost is everything. Together, they had not only saved a life, they had saved the honor of humanity and reshaped the galaxy's perception forever. And in that triumph, there was hope. Hope that courage, conscience, and love could guide not only humans, but all who dwelled among the stars. The night sky stretched endlessly above them, a canvas of infinite possibilities. And for the first time, Lyra and Ethan could see the future not as a threat, but as a promise that courage, principle, and love would always shine brighter than fear, no matter how vast the galaxy might be. They turned to one another, hands clasped, hearts steady, ready to face whatever the galaxy might send next. For they had learned the ultimate truth. Together they could face anything, and even the stars themselves could not outshine the courage within.